listening to your discussion. That's why I wouldn't like want to interrupt you.
Yes, thank you. Well, yeah, let's get started. Forgive me if there's a brief audio uh, interference with the live stream that we're started, but we'll get started here in just a moment once we're all set up.
That's why I would.
Okay, so we'll mute that and then we can get started. So, hello everyone and welcome today. My name is Matt Lackenbach. I'm the Executive Director of the Middle East Peace Civic Forum, or MEPSEF, as Jess, our team member, likes to say. And we're a nonprofit organization with a thoughtful and dedicated team. And we're here to promote and model powerful, impactful communication that makes a real difference. And our focus is on Israelis and Palestinians, but our concern extends to people all over the world, and we're really very passionate about working for peace in the human family. And you can learn more about us and our programs at our website, mepcf.org. That's Middle East Peace Civic Forum. So we're going to have a great conversation today. I'm joined by a wonderful cast of characters, and our style today for the conversation, we'd really like to have an interactive discussion. So you may ask questions of each other and talk to each other and not only feel like you need to respond to the facilitators. But our intention today is to really, as we say, dance in the conversation and have a lively discussion. And of course, Monica, you're our honored guest today, joining from Belfast. And I think you have something really valuable to contribute. And I listened to a recent interview of yours, and you shared that as a child, you witnessed a disparity in the pay for farmers. Was it harvesting potatoes? And you started something of a girls' revolt to demand equal pay. And perhaps that's the thing that kind of cast you on this path of standing up in the face of indignity and standing up for what's right, which you honed from a young age. And I actually had the honor and privilege of being in Ireland in August and traveling around and meeting people from Northern Ireland, from Dublin, and all across Southern Ireland. And I was in Leo's Tavern up north in County Donegal and met some lovely girls from Belfast, one of whom had lost her father in the Troubles, and she shared with me about her experience. And really all over Ireland, wherever I traveled, the sentiment was that people were so pleased to be getting on with life and just to be able to live and get along. And we're very interested today to hear about the lessons to be derived from Ireland and the experience there and the negotiations, which in many ways were pushed by the United States, but also involved the grassroots support from people like you and the women you worked with, and really decent people from all over who stood by you. So we'll definitely get into that. I'd like to introduce everyone who's with us today. So why don't we start with Nimat Shama? You're joining us today from Bethlehem in the West Bank, and you're an activist. You're one of the founders of the Democracy and Federalism Hub, and you work there as a co-director for peace and human rights. And as I said to you earlier, may God protect all the peacemakers wherever they may be, everyone today and everyone all over the world who's got the courage to stand up for love and peace in the human family. So thank you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you much for this introduction, and I want to
Yeah.
thank you for giving me this chance, like to join you guys. I want to learn more.
Yes.
I can see like many interesting people here, so I'm
Yeah.
just
So
looking forward
let
to listening to you.
very nice. Thank you. So let me introduce the others and then we'll dive right into the conversation. Thank you. So Yael Braudo, you're joining us from Israel. You're an Israeli peace activist, lawyer, co-director of Women Wage Peace, part of the largest women-led peace movement, and you specialize in family law and legal history, and you advance women's negotiations and peace leadership and Israeli-Palestinian cooperation, and you were named to BBC's 100 Women of 2023, and you speak globally on peacemaking and civil society solutions grounded in rights and accountability. And we're so grateful to have you with us today. And
Thank
then
you.
we
And I
have,
was honored to be included in this list along with Monica. So,
yes, beautiful. Thank you. And then we have our facilitation team. We have Mirabai joining us from the United States. Are you in New York today, Mirabai?
Yes, I'm in New York.
So Mirabai is a healer and a heart-centered person and facilitator joining us today. She's a wonderful healer, so we're so grateful to have you here as our co-facilitator. And then, of course, joining us from Dublin, Ireland, is Mr. Bill Phillips, who somehow went across the channel there from the UK at some point and landed in Ireland. So you're carrying the torch there for coexistence as well. So very good. And then we'll be joined, I believe, a little bit later by Dora Bender, who's the executive director of the Democracy and Federalism Hub. And she's promoting a open, embracing community for all people in Israel. And speaking of Dora Bender. Dora, you
oh,
appeared as soon as I mentioned your voice. Welcome today. So we'll let you
what an
dive right
entrance.
in. I've just introduced you. But let's begin with Monica. Um, why don't we hear from you first and just hear your thoughts about where we are? You know, we're at an important moment in history. We've just seen a ceasefire signed, the hostages released. But the war is not over, and we don't really know where this is going. So, what are your thoughts with us today as we think about what can we learn from what happened in Northern Ireland and your experience there?
Thank you, Matt. The context is very different, but there are similarities, and I've been many times back and forwards to the Middle East, to Gaza, to the West Bank. In fact, I monitored the PLA elections and the presidential elections in 2025 and 26. So that's 20 years ago. And so, but I've been back many times and noticed changes and had concerns. The conversation, I think, today is very timely, very different if we had have been having this conversation a month ago. I've studied the 20-point plan. It is interesting that it's clearly got some of the imprint from the Good Friday Agreement, some of the language about putting arms beyond use actually has been lifted directly from our own experience of how not to demand the decommissioning of weapons as a form of surrender, but to engage in that as a transition towards a political dialogue and a political agreement rather than the focusing on militias and armies. And that's been my experience. I signed the agreement 26 years ago on Good Friday. And when I got up from the table, I knew the hard work started that day, that every stage that I felt I had been in was a beginning of something different. And in a sense, it was only words on paper. For me, since then, the hardest task is being implementing that, enforcing what we agreed, what we promised, because in many ways they remain aspirations. And I think some of the 20 points are aspirations. But that's okay. It's okay to have an aspiration. But it needs to be followed by action and monitoring and oversight, timetables and targets. And I've been doing that for the last 30 years. So my life has changed from when I started campaigning for civil rights in the late 60s and marching. In fact, I didn't have much of a clue about feminism because I was carrying a placard that said "one man, one vote." And it came from the civil rights of the United States. And then we became more conscious of what it meant to be equal. And so my trajectory has been very much about civil rights, women's rights, and human rights. And if they're not at the very basis of any transition of any settlement. And I'm not even sure I want to use the word settlement, because we're still an unsettled people. And we may be for a long, long time, given the harm and the hurt that is caused in small areas. And Gaza is about the size of Northern Ireland. It's exactly the same size and the same population. But the proportion of deaths is huge. So I don't want to say too much at this stage, other than to say that, yes, there are lessons, but there are mistakes that can also be taken. If I had to go back to the table, what would I do differently? Over the years of trying to implement this peace agreement, what did I find worked best? And what did I find was not very useful? So I would rather we had a conversation about asking me questions on that than for me to talk at length. I can talk about the process and the need for it to be inclusive, how you cannot impose an agreement from outside. Yes, third-party internationals are extremely important, but they do not make the peace on the ground. The people do. The people have to own it, they have to see themselves in it, and they are the ones who will take it forward when the internationals leave. Yes, I can talk about the substantive issues. What goes into a peace agreement? It's always the focus is on security, mostly on armies and demobilization and disarmament. But it has to be more than that. So it also has to be about social and economic opportunities. It has to be about equality and human rights. It has to be about accountability, which one day will come for the human rights violations. We made a mistake in letting that be seen as something that was soft. And as I speak to you, the legislation has just been published in Westminster for the first time ever. After 26 years of a peace agreement, we finally, I think, have found a way forward on how to deal with the issues of accountability. So you can imagine how long that's going to take for Israel and the Palestinians. And so all of those pieces were in our agreement. It was very comprehensive. So inclusion, having it comprehensive, and then enforcing what you agreed. Those would be my three messages.
Excellent, thank you. So maybe we can pass it to Yael, because we can even workshop this a bit today. Yael, you shared that there were three specific requests. Maybe share a little bit about the movement of Women Wage Peace and Women of the Sun. We can hear a little bit about that. And then the three specific points that you mentioned around women's involvement and negotiations and supporting the grassroots peacemakers.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for having us all here to talk. I think that any opportunity for us to meet, to talk, to voice our message is crucial, especially in this time. I'm Yael Bahat. I'm co-director of Women Wage Peace. It's the largest, or one of the largest grassroots movements in Israel, working daily on the ground to create peace. We work vis-a-vis Israeli public and Israeli decision makers, trying to show, and we've been doing it for 11 years now, trying to show that peace is both possible and crucial, necessary, as opposed to the idea of managing the conflict that was prevailing until October 7th. We demanded the beginning of negotiations and resolving the conflict instead of managing it, of course, in diplomatic manners, since the movement was established. And we continue to demand exactly this. We're in a very interesting time. I mean, we're living in interesting times to begin with in the past few years, especially in our region, but not only. And this week has been very critical. There is a ceasefire. It was signed, by the way, not by in Egypt, not by the sides. Apropos what Monica said about the international forces and the third parties, Israel was not there to sign the ceasefire agreement. But let's say it was signed, and the IDF withdrawal withdrawn a little bit. Hostages, and this is a very, very crucial, live hostages were released earlier this week, and we were very, very happy and thrilled and relieved to see them walking on their feet, going back to their homes today, some of them. There are still 19 hostages that are presumed or declared dead, but haven't returned yet. Haven't been returned yet. And this is a very critical point in time where, on the one hand, it can lead, and this is what we demand, and I can elaborate more about it. This opportunity, this junction can lead to further negotiations, to the beginning of long-term negotiations, and the long-term agreement to end the conflict, to end the endless rounds of violence and fighting and missiles and killing, and end this blood cycle. But it can also lead to the continuation of the war, and even being more devastating and more harsh than it was before, because now the Israeli public, and I'm saying it with the great fear, Israeli public may be less harsh against, and opposed against the war, and once the live hostages are safe home. So this is I'm extremely worried. I'm even terrified. But we're continuing to work, and we're continuing our partnership with our Palestinian partners, Palestinian sister movement, Women of the Sun. I will say a few words about them. Women of the Sun is a relatively newly founded. They operate for 4 years now in the West Bank and Gaza. Established, based mostly in Bethlehem, but working really all across the West Bank and Gaza. We began working with them a few years ago, even before they formed their or established their movement, drafting together what we now call the Mother's Call, a joint vision, mission, commitment of both movements, calling all the women in the region and in the world to join us, to join the voice of the mothers, demanding peace in our region, demanding our leaders from both sides to be courageous and begin negotiations, inviting people from all over the world to support us. So we've been working together. We began working before October 7th, and when October 7th happened, in the first few weeks, people kept asking me if we're still working with those Women of the Sun. And my reply was, of course. I mean, this is the time that we are mostly needed. This is the time that our voices should be heard. And indeed, we managed in the past 2 years. We traveled all over the world, wherever we were invited to voice this message, this joint Israeli-Palestinian message of the mothers. We just want to raise our children, not only our biological children, right? The children of the region. They deserve a better future, a future of security, of peace, of prosperity. And this is our role as the mothers of the region, to heal this region. For this to happen, as you mentioned, first of all, we are doing peace all the time, every day on the ground. We work together. We hold joint sessions, joint meetings, and workshops in person if we can, online if we cannot meet, and we create peace every day, daily. And we are not the only ones. We have here Dora and I'm sorry, I don't know Nimat so well. So Dora, I do know, fortunately. And there are many, many, many like us, many who work daily on the ground for peace to happen. So we build peace, and we need to scale it up, and we need more funding for this. And this is one of our appeals to the international community. As Monica said, peace is happening on the ground, and we need to elevate the support for peace builders on the ground. And we also need negotiations to begin, as I said, and we need women around the table and civil society around the table, because otherwise the agreement will be much worse. It won't last for long. We know how fragile it is. And Monica, I had a chance to listen to Monica on a few occasions, telling about the difference they made when there are two women around the table, and the major difference that they made. And so women in civil society know how to do it. We do it every day. We know the needs and what our communities aspire for, and we can bring it to the table, and we can turn this agreement to be a better agreement, a long-lasting agreement. And as we talked before the official conversation began, we realize women wage peace and other peace movements here in the region, especially of women, we realize that we'll have so much work to do after the agreement is signed, as Monica explained. So we're here to stay. We're going to achieve an agreement. It happened in so many other countries, and it will happen in our region as well. I always say the only question is how many lives will be lost until it happens.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well said.
indeed.
Thank you.
And women have a completely different mentality, don't they, from the men? And they bring a different angle. And I think it's really important that women lead the way, because men won't.
Bill,
that's for sure.
Bill, that's true, but it's not all women have a completely different mentality. Some of the most difficult ones that I faced who would not, as Yael has just said when she was asked the question, are you still working with Women Under the Sun after October 7th? I'm sure it was other women who asked Yael that question, not wishing her to continue that dialogue. And she is so right that that dialogue was even more important on October 8th than it was on October 6th. So it's the day after that, Yale's response was exactly the right one, but not all women. And therefore, I do think it's really important that we, when we have a movement or when we have a coalition, that there are a few principles. And we had three simple ones, which was human rights, inclusion, and equality. And some of the women used to say to me, I'm all for progress, but I don't want change. And so they're just as much focused, those particular women, on going back to what they had before. And what they had before didn't work. So thank you for commending the role of women, because it doesn't often happen. In fact, probably Yale, and like myself and Nima and Dora, Amirba will identify with the fact that we often get a clap on the back whilst we're doing the work on the ground. But once the serious negotiations take place and a table is formed for people to come, the women are told, well, leave it up to us, men, and we'll sort it out for you. You're doing a really good job down there on the ground. But here at the higher level, it needs just to be us, because we're the serious players. And I think that, Bill, is where voices like yours are so much needed.
Indeed.
My curiosity is, how do we bring women to the table to be there for that negotiation? What steps, what needs to take place to bring women there to create an atmosphere where they're accepted and they can be part of negotiation?
I'll throw that back to you. How do you bring men to the table? They almost get an automatic right, either because they're carrying weapons or because they've been around forever in something that's called constitutional discussions, which tend to go nowhere because they're only talking to themselves. So when people say, what difference does women make? Makes all the difference in the world, but the value that we bring is that we're prepared to engage in that dialogue. Like Gail has just said, even when there's a crisis, when the times are rough and tough, as they are for Nima in Bethlehem at the minute. And Dora, where are you at the minute? Where are you based?
I'm Israeli. I'm in Rishon LeZion, that is closer to Tel Aviv. And
Okay.
Nimat is my colleague. She's from Democracy and Federalism Hub on the Palestinian side.
That's
So
what I thought. I thought you
yeah,
had the
yeah.
same
We
need.
both we're more of a conflict transformation organization, so we work more on practicality. How do we
Good.
get there? Behind
So-
dialogue, we move the stage of dialogue.
So the reason why I'm addressing you three in particular is because you're already influencers. You're already formed your network. The very fact you've got hub behind your name, the very fact that Yale has got waging in her name, they're waging and weaving and creating hubs. And seriously, if the people who think they're going to sustain peace at negotiation tables don't reach out to those networks, they're not going to have the work done on the ground that they want. So, Miraba, I understand your question, and it is about having these pre-existing networks, and they're there because three are here on the screen. And it is what I found was bring as many of those networks together, cooperate, find where you have agreement, because if you disagree amongst each other, you'll get picked off very quickly. Get that network as influential as it possibly can. Reach out to champions internationally, locally, nationally, who also believe in your cause, and make sure that people from outside understand that you need to be at the table. Why pass a UN Security Resolution 1325 that talks about women, peace, and security, and not do something about it? So it's also up to the men as champions who are at the table to look at the empty seat and say, who is not here? Why are there no women in our delegation? And why are there no women from those organizations who did so much to get us here in the first place? So there are different ways that you can influence negotiations. For us, we often try to influence them from outside, which is normally what women do. We write papers, we make submissions, we go on marches, we picket where they're negotiating and tell them enough is enough, you must keep this dialogue going. But also then when the door opens, you look at the opportunity and you say, I'm going to get in through that door. And so you either have the people inside, and that can be the negotiators themselves, requesting help and advice from you, or they can make you part of their civic society advisory group, which was the case in Geneva when the Syrians began to negotiate, or in Guatemala. Or you can get inside, which is what we did and which the South African women did. And we got there through an election, which is very unusual. I'm actually an elected member of a negotiating team that was called the Women's Coalition. So we had a mandate. We were reminded every single day that we were at the table, that we shouldn't be there, even if we had a mandate. And that made me a signatory to an international peace agreement of which there are only 3% women. And I understand it hasn't increased very much in the past 3 decades, despite the resolution. So what I'm saying is there are different roads and different pathways, and women choose to operate them in different ways. But I think in terms of the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations at the minute, the international community really does need to take this seriously. Now, look at who was in Sharm el-Sheikh. Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, almost stood out. Not almost, she did stand out. I thought it was great she was wearing a white trouser suit amongst all the black suits, which is what I used to do, just to show that there was one of us who wasn't in a black suit. But that is what's still happening at the high level. But I would love to have asked all those senior high level individuals how many women were in their teams advising them. Now, I know Jonathan Powell was the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of Britain, Keir Starmer, because both of them were involved in our peace negotiations. Jonathan Powell in particular at the time that Prime Minister Tony Blair was involved. He has travelled the world telling everyone that women must be at the negotiating table. Now, I know that there were words in the 20-point plan that came from Jonathan Powell. it would have been nice to have had 21st point on that plan, which would have said something about women from both Israel and Palestine need to be involved in the next step of these negotiations, and civil society. That didn't happen, despite the UN Security Council resolution. Maybe it was too much to ask. Maybe it was an aspiration, but women want to see themselves in those documents. So the question I would ask Merhaba is, from here on in, how do women get taken seriously in both the occupied territories and in Israel?
That is a good question. Lily?
So-
Matt, I would love to know you a little bit more because I really don't know you. Which you see how I know many peace activists and I don't know them all, which is great. So I'm always happy to meet new ones.
Thank you. So Yael, you mentioned one of the additional points was around the idea of no blame and no shame, and I think that's something that has been part of the ethos behind the peace conversation within the movement, because so much of what you see going around is just the vitriol and the anger and the almost demonization, if you will, of the quote unquote other side. And that makes it very hard to kind of listen with an open heart. And that spirit of kind of the common humanity that needs to be part of the conversation. How can that be made more rich?
The answer is simple. It's the work on the ground of people to people. And we've been doing it for a long time now, especially in the past few years with Women of the Sun. Just an example, we held a training program for peace building for environmentalists and for religious women from both sides. We had both separate sessions, international sessions, but also binational sessions during the war. It was actually a program that it was funded by USAID, and it was we signed a contract with them 10 days before October 7th. And when October 7th, we just had to go through, we had a very big event in Jerusalem and the Dead Sea on October 4th, just 3 days before October 7th. And we said, so we're going to go through this event and then rest for the weekend and reconvene on October 8th to begin implementing the program. So it took us a few weeks, I would say, to understand what we need to do, but it was so clear to all of us that we're not giving up this plan, this program. And we implemented it. We even managed to almost complete it before President Trump shut down USAID. We almost completed it. So we did have hold binational meetings of Israeli and Palestinian women during the war. There are not many women. There are like 15 or 10, there are 15 to 20 women in each group. So it's a small scale. This is why I say that we need to amplify and then scale up our programs. But those groups, those women who did meet at the end of the program, they said, I can quote, one of the Israelis, the Israeli participant said, for me, it was like a shot of hope every month. This coming to meet my friends, my sisters from the other side, from the West Bank. Unfortunately, of course, we couldn't include Gazan women in the program. And one of the Palestinian women said, I learned during, I met you and learned that you also experience difficulties and fears. And it touched me so deeply because this is exactly the humanization that we seek for, we look for, we need. We need to know that the people on the other side are people, are humans. They experience hopes and fears, and they want, even if they don't want to live with us, they want to live, and they need to know that on the other side there are also people. And I will just end with a last quote from one of the participants when we closed the program, and they had this round of sharing what we felt and what we took from this program. one of the environmentalists, the Israeli one, once said that she learned that the most sustaining resource is the human resource. And this is and I take this and we say we need to have more people meeting each other. I know that for me it's my daily routine. I talk to my colleague Marwa on a daily basis, and I think that every Israeli and every Palestinian needs to experience this in-person connection and see the human on the other side. And it's possible. And it was done in Northern Ireland. We know how successful it was there. And when time comes and when negotiations begin, as many people on both sides will see the humans on the other side, they will also support negotiations. They will also support the agreement. They will also be willing to implement the agreement and to agree and live by it. So this is the work that we are doing all the time on the ground, and we need to amplify this work.
Matt, I'd like to add to that in that it took us a long time around the table. I'm not even sure the day we signed the agreement if everyone at the table recognized the humanity of their enemy, because they were still calling each other names, criminals, terrorists, you can imagine, subversives. But we still succeeded in signing an agreement. What difference did the women make? The women said that speaking to people who disagree with you is not a crime, and we will speak to them. They're at this table, and they're there for a reason. And perhaps the agreement would be worse. It wouldn't be an agreement if they weren't at the table. So what do women do? We do what we do every day in our lives. We facilitated those discussions. We worked behind the channels. When the men said that they thought it was a strength not to be seen to be speaking to anybody who didn't agree with them, we said that's not a strength, that's a weakness, because you won't know what their interests are. So we became facilitators and at sometimes mediators, but we never forgot that we were negotiators and that we had our own agenda as well. So that's the difference that women make. They bring what Yale has just said. If they weren't at the table, if we hadn't been at the table, there would not have been one word in that peace agreement about what we were going to do about the things that Yale has just talked about in terms of dealing with the past and dealing with the legacy, what we were going to do in terms of reparations for the victims. There's a small chapter. I wish it had been longer, but at least it was there. And it would not have been there if women had not been at the table. Because in Mirabeau's question, guess who is at the table? It's the guys who want to be in the government and the guys who have held the guns and the weapons. And so when women come to the table, they often come as those who have been speaking to the victims. Many of us were in that category. We were survivors. And so there's a whole piece in our agreement about how to deal with that. So recognizing the humanity and the legitimacy, I have to also add the word legitimacy to the word humanity. Because as Mandela said to us, if you're going to go to the table, there's no point in sitting amongst your friends. And that was how we came to the table. We said we are going to come to that table to talk to the people who've been left out in the cold. Because if we drive them back into the cold, then we won't have peace.
I think one of the things I find interesting is when you think about the Americans and their view of the Israelis and the Palestinians, that they don't understand them because they're so far away. They don't know them. They're just, a mass of the enemy, so to speak. But in Israel, everyone's so close together. You're on top of one another. But everyone still doesn't know the other side of the fence. So it's the same situation. And it's that not knowing that maintains the violence, isn't it? It's when you get to know them that you think, well, hang on, you're the same as me. Don't we want the same things? And when they realise that, there's no need for conflict because they don't want conflict. They want the same. And it's the women that suffer that, as you say. It's the women and the children that are in the victim mode while the men are in the aggressive mode. So that's another difference between the men and women as well, isn't it, in both situations?
When I was first elected to the Parliament, in Parliament buildings, the way the Assembly, the legislative body, was set out was it had a visitors gallery where the visitors sat, and they were called the strangers. So the title of where they had to go was the Strangers Gallery. And I stood up and I said, all of us standing here in this assembly are strangers, and the people up there are not the strangers. And it struck me that day that if we remained as strangers, which you've just articulated, you might live amongst them, you might live close to them, but they're strangers. And some people wanted to stay that way. And that's the most difficult thing, is building the relationships, the chemistry, and that takes leadership, which we haven't really spoken about yet. And what I learned was watching the leadership at the table. And the best leadership came from people who challenged their own side. It's easy to point the finger at the other side. But when you stand up and challenge your own side as a leader, you are very courageous. Because you're going to have to bring your people with you, but you're going to challenge them every single day on issues that they may not have ever dreamed they were going to have to deal with. And we succeeded it. I thought we would never have people like South Africa had. And Mandela said to us, when I said to him, but you've been incredibly fortunate with your leadership. And he said, go home and grow them. It's the best advice we ever got.
Yeah, Monica, thank you very much. I like your sentence that when you said to talk to the other side who has different opinion is not a crime. And I totally agree. And maybe it's easier for us, like when you talk to women in Jerusalem, Israel, Bethlehem, maybe it's easy. But I'm curious to know what steps for women in Gaza, like even the war stops. There is Hamas there, and Hamas, it's different. They have different mindset. They don't believe in human rights, women rights. How can you encourage women in Gaza to be part of the leadership? It's insecure for them, and they are sitting every day. So it's really a big challenge. But I'm really curious. How can we deal with that?
Nima, we had the equivalent of the Taliban in Northern Ireland. We have the equivalent. We have the equivalent. We have the equivalent of Hamas in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
We have people who are misogynist, homophobic, racist. Those people exist, and sometimes they form political parties on the basis of that thinking. So it's not just, yes, it is, and I know who you're talking about because I have been there. But those people with those mindsets exist everywhere. Your question is, can they change? Can they become more?
They control Gaza. That Hamas is still not in power. Even if this military Hamas, as Trump said, but Trump said a very important sentence. This military means that remove all weapons that threaten Israel or threaten other countries. The small weapons, they still have it to kill the people there, to still in power. This is very important. They still in control. They're controlling all Gaza.
Yep, Nima, they still do here too. They still have small weapons here. Sometimes you'll never get all the weapons. This is where the weapons are. Inside the head. It's like domestic violence. You can take the poker or the stick out of the man's hand and throw it out the window. But have you changed his attitude? So what I have struggled with all my life working on violence against women and girls, I took the same lessons to working with militias and armed groups. And so when the community stopped supporting Hamas, and I have no doubt in Gaza that there is a large majority of the community no longer want to see a militant way forward. So, Nima, I think where your work is most needed, but you can advise me, is the discussions between Fatah and Hamas and the other groups. Because when I was there 25 years ago, I saw the same division existing between Fatah and Hamas and the other smaller parties. And that is what happens when you stand for election. Everyone competes. But if you see in that transitional plan at the minute, I think where the leadership is going to have to come from is finding leaders that can work across those divides on the same side. On the same side. Israel and the occupied territories on the other sides, as we talk about, have enormous difficulties to face. But where you're sitting in Bethlehem, you have enormous difficulties to face because you're facing it inside. And that's where I found our biggest difficulty was. It was people on the same side who could not see a way forward amongst themselves and competed in terms of trying to bring the other side down. And the only people that will benefit from that would be the Israeli side. So that's why I think if this opportunity is taken now, it has to be around how do we create a political transition. And I've already been listening to some of the leaders on the reading every newspaper, watching every television program on this because it's so close to my heart. It's close to the whole world's heart. It should be, and their head and their hands. And the way that I'm thinking is that so much work now and support needs to go in to helping Palestinians engage in those dialogue. Because those particular discussions and tough dialogue, that's going to start happening now. Not just about how do you form a police force, not just about how you take the weapons and put them beyond use, which is the exciting language that came from Northern Ireland into into the 20-point plan. It was lifted exactly from our experience. It's not just on that. It's also about if you're going to go and have forms of governance arrangements and form a coalition with, I see, civil society, how are you going to engage in that? And so the question would be, where are the leaders in both Gaza and the occupied territories of the West Bank? Where are they? And where is the help coming to form that leadership that's prepared to have those tough discussions?
Yeah, I'm sure they are available actually, but once we have democracy, like when, for example, if I wake up this tomorrow and I found I'm in a country or society that they promote democracy, so you have the freedom to talk, to say your opinion. So I'm sure that you will find all the leaders like come out and just want to say, I'm sure they are working, but maybe behind the scenes because no security, you understand me? Because usually the Middle East suffers from no democracy. This is the Middle East, unfortunately.
Nina,
So
I have to say in my book, I was so impressed by how you ran those elections in 2025 and 2026. I came back saying that we needed to learn from those elections. First, if you remember, every third person on the candidates list had to be a woman. And then in Bethlehem, where you are, there was a quota for Christians.
yeah.
Those elections were as democratic as any elections I had ever monitored. And so I was very proud to be able to come back when everybody was talking about how it was going to be a basket case. I said, no, there were lessons that I want to bring from there back to our democracy, which we call it a democracy, but we didn't have affirmative action. We didn't look at the underrepresentation of minorities. We didn't look at the underrepresentation of women. We didn't look at the underrepresentation of Christians. And here it would have been on Catholics in the police because they were so underrepresented. And you did. And then you build on that. And by the way, I agree with you. You do have those leaders because I met them. And I hope some of them are still around. And they were there then, speaking with courageous voices. Yes, what I also found was there was apartheid, that people were being prevented from getting to the polling stations and people were being stopped. And that's why you have to have free and fair elections. But believe it, hold it in your heart that democracy is right outside your front door in Bethlehem.
Yeah. That's wonderful. May I add something? I think this is really tied to my journey as a woman and as an Israeli woman. I'm Jewish. I don't look typical Jewish on the background, but I think throughout my my life, I always try to fit somewhere. And I actually rolled down like a few years ago to work for Challenge. Challenge is an NGO that promote conflict transformation. And through the NGO was exposed to a program named the Federal Forum. Actually, I'm one of the founder of the Federal Forum that actually discuss about alternative solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we're discussed in terms of confederation and federation solutions, that it's something new. And I met Nimat there. Actually, yeah, Nimat was part of Challenge, and I saw this bright woman, and me seeking for other women to join this program because I was the only woman for the longest time, for a long, long time. And actually, it seems to me now, the more and more that I am part of trying to find a solution and a path, that I see more Palestinian women being engaged and really wanted to be part, and I'm talking behind dialogue, okay? I understand the dialogue, it's something very important, and also reconciliation, but to create the change, we have to take steps. We have to see what are the alternatives. We have to discuss them, and we have to understand what steps do we need to take. And Nimat is one of the brave women that when we decided to build the Democracy and Federalism Hub, she was charging, and she's part of the Palestinian. I mean, it's two different organizations. So I'm very proud, and I want to give credit, and actually that I admire many Palestinian women that I'm part of, that we work together. And I would like also to Nimat to share how it is to be a Palestinian woman and actually speak about politics, because we are talking about politics.
Yeah, actually, it's a very big challenge, like for a Palestinian woman to be involved, because as I mentioned before, we don't have democracy here. This is number one. Number two, men mentality. Like, of course, I will not let my daughter, my wife, to be involved in politics, because also there is no security. And number three, also maybe they don't want women to be on the table, because they already knew that women can do and can make a change. So it's very complicated here. But the good thing is that due my work in Democracy Federalism Hub for the Palestinian part, I used to make some interviews with Palestinians, so especially for also women. And really, I'm very happy, because I found some women really interested to talk about politics and curious to know what alternative solutions do we have. Because usually they know only one solution, which is the two-state solution. And they were asking me, do we have another solutions on the ground? Which is like we promote like confederation, federation, as Dora mentioned. So they were curious to know about it. But also, I can't hide that also asked us, like, am I secure if I say my opinion? Is it safe to say my opinion? Some women prefer to work behind the scenes till now. Like, don't share our photos, please. It's critical situation. It's, you can understand. Other, which is less percentage, let me say, they have no mind to share their photos or to say their opinion. But unfortunately, the majority, they care about sharing their photos until now because they afraid of both sides, like from the Israeli government and Palestinian Authority as well.
That's
So,
understandable.
but still, there's a very big challenge. I'm telling you the truth from my experience
Yep.
from a recent work after October 7.
Yeah.
So we really have leaders, and we really have some women, they are interested and they want to educate themselves, and they want to be on the table, but they still afraid, or they prefer to work behind the scenes until now.
Nima, you have the list system. How I got elected was we had the list system. I think it's a greater protection. What experts need to do now as a result of this 20-point plan, and particularly for your elections, is decide which election system is best suited to the circumstances. The one that was best suited to ours that got me to the peace table was the list system, which you're familiar with in the occupied territories. And it helps women. And I'll tell you why it helps women. Because it's a team that stands. It's not the individual. And the team then decides on where on the list the women can be placed. And in fact, you can have affirmative action on that list. And so we were able to go forward with a list. We called ourselves the Women's Coalition. Many of the women in the coalition could not have their faces known. In fact, I used to laugh and say, we're the only successful party that had candidates that were unknown. No one knew their names. When I eventually had to come out of that list system and stand by myself in the constituency, I hated it because I was a mother of small children. My poster was going up on the lamppost. People knew where I lived. And I tend to try and forget now the things that happened because they were so awful. And I've just put them behind me. But the lesson is that others need to be there to support women when they do that. They need to put safety around them. They need to put security around them. There are more laws now than there were 26 years ago. And women are very vulnerable, especially if they're mothers. They don't want their children attacked. So we've managed to change things where our addresses are not printed. But your list system will protect you more than some of the other systems. But I think it's up to the international community also to assist you with those elections and to be able to say, this is what works. Because it's not the first time coming out of war that a system has to be designed to be inclusive of minorities, inclusive of women, but also to put security and safety in around the candidates.
Yes, thank you, Monica. I don't know, Dora, if you want to add something.
I think I like what it's good. First of all, thank you for sharing that. And me as an Israeli, I always try to bring the equality and equity. Also because we decided to have another organization, Democracy and Federalism Hub, on the Palestinian side, but we wanted to be an independent organization, not dependent on the Israeli side, and also address the needs of the Palestinian community, from in terms of education for democracy and also the opportunity within federalism structure for government structure. So I feel like people like you or that leading transformation, seeing the gap, and I really seek to bring that we truly need to help bring that equality and equity to the table. So we'll be able to be successful. And I'm reaching out. Okay, I always reach out for support, also, Yael. But I think that our colleague from the Palestinian side really truly need support, whether if it's financially, if it's education, if it's reach out. And I want to commend DFH Palestine for being an outstanding organization that's being built right now. With I met there like unbelievable young Palestinian women and men that are eager to create change. And this is the first time that I'm involved in something that is beyond dialogue and reconciliation. We're really looking into practical steps, like what do we need to do on the ground for us to create that change and to create that path. So I'm looking forward. And first of all, thank you for Matt for giving us the opportunity, and also Walid, but Walid is not here. And Walid basically is from Gaza, and we're also trying to promote democracy and federalism hub in Gaza. We have many people that are interested to do it, and it's just because of the war, it's being slowed down. But the Palestinian side is working on the connection with Gaza. So yeah, so thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
I just want to take what Dora said and just also tell about Women with the Sun's work now, because they don't only work with us. They also have Palestinian to Palestinian programs. They reach out to their communities, train women, vocational training and political training, and even feminist training. They just completed the 1325 training for women. They also work to provide humanitarian aid both in the West Bank and in Gaza as much as they can. So they're doing this work on the ground, and you know, when people say, but this is not peace, and I said, no, this is peace building, because this is how you build a community. This is how you build the support. This is how, when the Women's Coalition in Northern Ireland had 6 weeks to get elected and sit around the table, they managed to do it because they had the support of the communities. And this is what the Women of the Sun have been doing since the beginning of their movement, which is really admirable because they did it very intuitively. And now, of course, they have a very clear strategic in the work plan, but this is what they're doing on the ground.
Could I make a suggestion that you, for all of us who are on this, and I'll do it also, and Bill and I can do it, is that we each get in touch with the ambassadors whose countries were represented in the 20-point plan, and who stood around that day and agreed that next steps, that we ask the ambassadors to make a note of your organizations and to have you included in the transitional discussions, both if elections are called in the occupied territories. And I know the ambassadors, and in particular those who have recently recognized Palestine: Spain, Norway, Ireland, the United Kingdom, France, to suggest to all of those ambassadors, because they now will have ambassadors working in the areas that they've now recognized, is how are we going to promote women in the next stages? And likewise with the Israeli side, to engage with the ambassadors and say, here are the organizations who've been doing this work, and here are their ideas, here are their papers, and submit those. But also have your influence, knowing that they know exactly how to reach you, they know exactly if they have questions, that Yael is the person to talk to, Nima and Dora are the people to talk to, that you have that data bank ready. Now is the time. Get everything ready now. Prepare, prepare, prepare. You'll never have an opportunity like this. And don't let it pass you, because now is where you exert your influence. You've done the work. You've got it to this stage. Now make sure that they find you the most useful and influential person they could talk to.
Thank you, Monica. Will you please share your email or contact on the chat that we can maybe talk more?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm working every day with folks in the Middle East. And
Okay, thank you.
I have to say, pay credit to the Irish government. The
Wow.
ambassador in Ramallah is the husband of the ambassador in Israel. Can you imagine? Husband and wife team?
That's amazing.
Yeah. And they have 3 small children.
Wow.
And the ambassador in Amman, the Irish ambassador, is also a woman. The Irish ambassadors are 52% female around the world.
Wow.
So again, when in this discussion we asked what relevance do women make, I found them extremely relevant to have a woman ambassador that I could talk to, especially when the United States were involved in our discussions. Many of them were women, and the men used to come up to me and say, "Is this a conspiracy by the United States to only appoint women that we have to talk to?" So that would be something I think should come out of this Middle East Peace Civic Forum, that in every possible way, if we're building a civic society, strong, influential network, that we get those champions coming to us in every direction.
Yeah. And we're happy to lead that and be a part of that. And like you said, so much is working with partners and the networks and building the networks. And we talked about the fear of speaking out and the importance of speaking out. And the term that comes to mind is giving each other cover. You know, we've got each other's back. And so it seems to me that one of the critical elements here is building that public support quickly and rapidly and strongly so that it reaches a critical mass, such that the ones like Nimad in the West Bank who are speaking out and the people in Gaza who want to speak out and in Israel and all over, they have cover. We've got their back as part of this big movement. So what do you think are the keys to building that movement and that popular support quickly to the point where the critical mass is there?
I think you've already done it. It's how to snowball it, to make it a bigger snowball. You've already, got some of that together. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on this platform today. So now it's for you to, whatever connections you've got, Matt and Bill and Mirba, to make it known that who the groups that you have are working here, make sure that they're contacted. And also, I mean, I certainly will let Jonathan Powell, who's the national security guy, who was influential in our peace talks and is now influential in these peace talks, know about the groups. He was the former, he's just come out of civic society into this role. He was Prime Minister Blair's chief advisor during our peace talks. Then he ran an NGO called Intermediate in London. And then when Keir Starmer got elected, he's been brought in as National Security Advisor. I would strongly recommend that you make contact with
Definitely.
people like that. All I'm suggesting is build your influence. You've got the networks. They're called pre-existing networks. You don't have to go out and find new ones. You do what Yale said earlier, is you extend it and make sure that it looks like and it seems like you've got influence in your own place. And then you have all of these other connections coming towards you. That's really important. And believe me, the ambassadors that I know that are working in both the occupied territories and in Israel are standing ready to help in whatever way they can. And I just mentioned a few who are women, but I don't have the full list, but I wish I did. If I was there, that's the first thing I would be doing, is looking quickly to see who the ambassadors were that support my cause. Some of them won't, and I could tell you quickly which countries wouldn't, but I could also tell you which countries would. And I couldn't believe when I saw the people that had been invited to Sharm el-Sheikh, and I thought, why are they there? Given that, given their response to some of the conflicts that are happening elsewhere. And I would be happy to name them. I'm too old now for any to care about what they're going to do to me.
That's good. We need more of that.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe we need to
one
take
of
you
them
up on
was
that.
Orban from Hungary. And I could not, I actually did understand why he was invited, because of who President Trump was obviously in charge of the invitation list. But I also work on Ukraine. And, you know, we face the same issue. Who are our friends? Who are our supporters? Who wants an end to this war? Who does not want human rights violations inside your country or outside? Who's closing down the NGOs that support women? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to understand how some of the individuals are standing ready to support you because
Yeah.
they've done it elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, we talked about the importance of being in communication with people you disagree with, and sometimes you never really know when you kind of crack through the veneer of some ideology and you touch a human piece of them on the inside, and it makes all the difference.
That's true, but I tell you, I've dealt with a lot of dinosaurs, Matt.
Indeed.
Some of them have managed to morph, and some of them are still as back in the last century.
They've gone extinct. Well, who'd like to jump in here?
I will jump in with something personal because, you know, for the personal is the political, but in a very, very deep sense for me today. Today would have been my father's 73rd birthday. He didn't get to celebrate this birthday. He committed suicide at the age of 40. I was only 16. Today, and it took me many years to understand that he suffered from PTSD because of his military service, and today especially it was so powerful for me because his military service was in the missing and captive unit of the IDF. Right after it was established, right after at the beginning of the 1973 war, he was 21 back then. Was drafted to this unit. He was sent after the war was over. He was sent to look for body parts in the deserts of Sinai and in the Golan Heights. He was very eager to find a decade later during the Lebanon War, the first one. He was eager to find clues so they can locate missing soldiers. And he suffered a really great trauma because of his service. It was a different generation today. Most PTSD soldiers are being treated. It is more known and accepted that you don't have to be a combatant to suffer from PTSD. You can also be, you know, the person who searches for the bodies after. And it took me many years to understand that I am not officially, but I am a bereaved daughter. And it took me also many years to understand that I chose this path of peace building for him, for my mother, who carried his pain for so many years. And today it should have been his birthday. And what I know, if he could have wished for something, and I wish, is for Israel to take any diplomatic, political mean to locate and retrieve the 19 missing captive people were we know they're dead. There is evidence that they're dead, but Hamas says that they cannot find it. They cannot find them. And I know there are ways, political ways, because when my father, as a 21-year-old soldier, was searching for body parts in Egypt, in Sinai, it was a part of the ceasefire agreement after the 1973 war. There were a few weeks when Israeli soldiers were able to search the Sinai deserts, and I know it's possible also in Gaza.
Mm.
what I'm frightened, that I said it, is that Israel will take this opportunity to say, better word, sorry, too emotional, that they can claim that Hamas is violating the agreement, and then they can retaliate and they can attack. And I'm terrified that it's going to happen, really terrified. We all are.
Neil,
I was so thrilled, yeah, to see the 20 hostages coming back, but I'm terrified that
yeah,
it's not the end. And I urge from here, and this is something that I posted it today, and Women Wage Peace also posted it today. Don't, we call it the Israeli government, don't go back to war. There
yeah.
are so many other ways to resolve the situation. Everyone needs to come back, right?
Okay.
We cannot give up on this, but there are political ways to do it. And this is my call today, both personally and politically.
Neil, I'm going to support you on this in one way that I can. I was involved with the disappeared. We had 17 bodies that needed to be returned. And so we established a commission for the location of victims' remains. The IRA said they couldn't find the remains because where they had buried them, it was too difficult, and that the ground had moved, etc. And it has taken us many years to get them back. But we made mistakes and were looking in the wrong places. And then we got this superb forensic team. And so today, Colombia and the Northern Ireland team worked together because Colombia faced the same problem after their peace agreement, and we faced the same problem. How do we locate the bodies? Are they people who disappeared them? Are they not in good faith by not returning them? Or is it a serious issue where they cannot find them? And so I didn't develop it. We found the people who had developed the most sophisticated technology, forensic technology, that could locate them. And so I think, Yale, what your strong voice needs to be able to say is that amongst this rubble, amongst this devastation, some of the bodies are probably buried in the tunnels, and that they may need support and technology to locate them, along with all the other bodies that are under the rubble. But the quicker that this is done, and so it would seem to me that one of the transitional steps that they should do right now is to set up a commission for the location of victims' remains. That was the official title. And very quickly we began to recover them. But it was 15 years that we realized we'd made every mistake and they couldn't be recovered. The second thing I want to say is my condolences. I had the same experience. My sister died by suicide, and her birthday is in 3 weeks. And she was a nurse in intensive care during the conflict. And we to this day do not know whether it was the trauma of dealing with all of the years and years of what she saw, or that she had less resilience in being able to cope with after the agreement and everything. And unfortunately, here the response to our victims and survivors was to give them medication, which made them more depressed and made them less able and less capable of making decisions. And of course, in the end, she came to the view that the best decision for her was to leave this world. So her birthday is in 3 weeks, and your father's birthday is at this time. And so, really, what I'm saying is that we all carry these burdens with us forever.
Thank you.
And and when I look at what's happening in the Middle East now, I'm thinking it's going to be generation after generation of trauma. And so again, the expertise on this is much better than it was when we got up from the table and walked away thinking, well, now this and this and this is what we need to do. And we forgot about the trauma.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Well, we acknowledge your father's birthday and what you went through. My daughter is 16. It's such a formative age, And, you know, just we look at all, of course, my other daughter's 12. She'll be a bat mitzvah in a couple of months. And we look at, you know, all the martyrs, all the people who have died in this conflict and other conflicts. And I think if we can honor their loss and respect their loss. Of course, a lot of people who died are people whose ideologies we disagreed with or disagree with, but probably on some level, people thought they were dying for a good cause or a noble cause. So that's all in the past. We can't undo the past, but what we can do is say, all right, we get to put a stake in the ground now, today, and say we are standing for a better future for all our people, and to maybe on some level honor the people who have died as part of this conflict, either whether they're combatants or innocent people. Maybe that even sounds distasteful, but you know, we can't. We have a visitor here. We can't undo the past, but we can definitely reform what we do now.
I thank you. I dream of a joint Israeli-Palestinian commission for locating missing persons, because I know that in Gaza there are so many missing people now, much more than 19. So
Yes.
so this should be our joint cause.
Totally. Are you seeing the pictures, Yale, in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem that we're seeing of the return of the Palestinian dead? There was about 60 bodies returned lying on a morgue yesterday. It was
Unfortunately,
massive.
Israeli media does not show this footage from Gaza.
That's what
It hasn't, yeah,
That's what I
during
thought.
the past 2 years, yes.
You know, I thought that because it was quite shocking for us to see. It was a massive pile of bodies that had been returned from Israel. So it's clear that the trauma on both sides is huge, and it showed one mother who didn't know whether her son was under because he disappeared 3 years ago, and she doesn't know if he's dead or alive. So it is, and we understand in this Jewish tradition, in the Muslim tradition, in the Christian tradition, the importance of having a body returned for burial, and to have a
Right.
site where you can then pay your respects. And that was my, as a public figure, I used to go out and say that ritual is so rich in all our traditions that it is a human rights violation to not return the body. But it is also a violation of our religion not to be able to give the rites of passage to the deceased. And so, you know, I will try and find the commissioner and let him know how concerned you are about how this could create another difficulty in the transition. The commissioner was a brilliant guy that we had here. He's just retired. But recently we met with the Colombian judges and the Colombian commissioners. We met here in Ireland, and we discussed what similarities that we lent to each other's processes, and that now has to be lent to you in Israel. So I just hope that someone in the higher governance levels, the civil service, or even in your parliament, has been giving some thought to this. How do we get the highest level of expertise to assist in the return, or equally to go into Gaza and assist in this return through the Red Cross, perhaps?
I mean, I must say, I will approach. It's not high. I mean, we have connections with mostly with the opposition now in Israel. For the past 3 years, it has been impossible to work with the administration. We've been protesting against them for 3 years now, almost 3 years on the streets, even before October 7th. But I can reach out to opposition parliament members, and maybe we can start there. And I will be in touch with you next week, I think, about this commission. I want to learn more, and maybe we can push for it in the region.
a simple parliamentary question, because I think your parliament is out of recess now and it's meeting again, is to ask
Soon, yes.
one of the opposition members to put down a question, and so it has to be answered. Has any thought been given to the establishment of a commission for the location of victims' remains on both sides, so as to overcome this? You don't have to add any more to it. And the answer then will be no, we have, or we have not. And the follow-up question then can be, this is urgently needed. And the expertise exists, from, Ireland's case, Colombia's case. Bring those people in immediately and have the International Red Cross recognize them.
Thank you.
Because this should happen, Neil, before it becomes, as you said, before people take a harsh reaction.
Exactly.
Because that was a very good point you made at the start of this, is the last thing you need right now is for an obstacle to become, the overturning of the ceasefire.
Yeah. We'll do that. And just one last comment, because you mentioned before how we need to work together. So really quickly, just to mention that the Israeli peace camp has woken up in this regard after years and decades of fighting with each other over the things that we don't agree upon. We united more than a year and a half ago, with the coalition called It's Time.
Yes.
Organizing Sisti. Monica was supposed to be our one of our guests of honor in early May this year. But this coalition is of 60 organizations, Israeli organizations, peace organizations and movements. We are working together now. We visited the Abu Mazen at the Mukata last week. We organized the summits and journeys, and we call together for peace. We decided to overcome our disagreements, and it's very difficult to overcome the disagreements because we keep fighting all the time over the messaging, over the actions. But we know how important it is to be together and be stronger.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to come in person, but Avla and I did an input to that huge conference, It's Time. And then we wrote an article for Herat's newspaper. And my friend Brona did a podcast for Herat. I'm thinking after this discussion that we should write a piece about what you've just raised, for Herat's, building on our experience, building on your concern and building on my experience, that this should not be allowed to become an obstacle, and that we move the situation. And this is what women are good at, that you've raised an issue, you've thought about it, your concern, your worries. How can we move to getting a resolution, and raise it publicly before people say, Hamas can't be trusted ever again. When Hamas might be out there at the minute searching day and night for those bodies, actually knowing that this is a serious, serious issue.
Can I say something? And I'm sorry, because Nima did state it about the situation in Gaza right now, about Hamas. And this is the message that we get from many of our colleagues in Gaza, that Hamas is doing execution right now. They are killing people. And I think the international community choose to ignore it. And I apologize because I don't hear any discussion about their suffering, and there's no coverage. And I think that this should be addressed. And Nimat, you know more than me. I mean, I get that phone call from my call.
Dora, can I correct you? It's the first item on the news every night, internationally.
Yeah, I want to say something.
It's been shown all over the world. Now, here's the thing. Who did not expect that to happen? I absolutely expected that would be the next thing that happened. It happens in every conflict. In every conflict. In the days just after the ceasefire and before the international monitors demand disarmament, that those who are felt to be informers, it's wrong. It's a massive human rights violation. But look at the human rights violations that have taken place so far. So this is what, is the international community know exactly what has happened. Now, it didn't help that President Trump said he's not that concerned about it. And it tends to be the case that when people take out people on their own side, the police turn a blind eye, or the army turn a blind eye, because they're saying, well, it's their own folk that they're killing. And that is also a violation. But believe me, it is really going against any sympathy or empathy that anybody had for Hamas. They're really destroyed it now by these pictures going out around the world.
Yeah, but it's not enough. I want to add something. Like when for example, Al Jazeera or any other channel, when they were talking about war in Gaza, it was much. But now about the execution in Gaza, that much. It's not enough. It's really a crime, and really like the word ignore it. I'm with Dora because it's not enough. Some programs like in Lebanon channels started talking about this.
Al Jazeera is showing it.
Yeah,
Nima,
I shared
Al
it.
Jazeera is showing it. It is showing it. I
Showing
watch
it
Al
in
Jazeera.
Lebanon.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, they are showing it, and I share it on my Facebook that against doing this, which is illegal. No government, no court. Who are you to do this? Killing people in this way. When I share it on my social media, can you imagine? No even single like. No single like. And I have one objection that are you crazy? What you are talking about? It's Hamas. It's a resistance movement. So she knows what she's doing. It's legal. Can you imagine the mentality that we have? It's really, oh my gosh. I said, oh my gosh, what you are talking about? Are you serious? And they are educated people.
Yeah.
Palestinians, I'm talking about Palestinians.
Yeah.
So really, we missed this, the awareness, we missed it. We missed the human rights. Even people themselves, they don't know what do you mean by human rights? It's their right, even if they are guilty. It's their right to define, to defend, to have a lawyer, to have this like execution. It's a very big decision. Even big democratic countries, they don't do this. They took months, years to take this decision. I don't know what they are talking about. We have really very bad. It's not enough. Even here, and when we talk about the West Bank, they ignore to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. So why? But I like one thing, that Palestinian Authority demand this. And they said this is illegal and we are against what Hamas is doing now in Gaza. And I share this.
Mhm.
Do you know
for the
any-
Palestinian Authority, they
you
said
know-
no.
Do you know any war that isn't a dirty war? Last night, I finished reading a 500-page report, which was exactly on this subject 50 years ago. And it shows you that even 50 years later, you can be held accountable. And Bill will know what I'm talking about. 50 years ago, one of the informers killed 137 people, murdered. And it was known to MI5 that this individual was a criminal and was allowed to go free and to continue his acts. Then on the other side, there was about 137 murders that I had to read about. I am on that commission, and the report will be published. We are shocked, beyond shock, that this was allowed to continue for as long as it did. So the rule of law goes out the window when vengeance comes in the door. And it will take you many years, Nina. So don't be shocked that people are not giving you a like on social media. And my advice to you would be to stay away from that, because it will just traumatize you. But keep remembering the humanity of the good people.
I'm trying, I'm a human. How can I see this and I don't have any action? I
Yeah.
want to share that this is illegal thing. I want to share the awareness that this is illegal to do this for people.
Yeah. It's
to share
it's
it. We can't keep silent and don't share it on even social media. But really, I was shocked about the awareness. Like
well,
it's Hamas authority, it's Hamas right to do this. Okay, why?
Nima,
Don't
Nima,
support it.
Nima, I hope you're listening. It is in our televisions every night and every morning. There is awareness, and people will be held accountable. And so do not think that the world is not appalled. But the world is also appalled at many other things that has gone on in this war. And one day, those individuals will have to live with themselves. If the human rights international standards cannot be stood up at the moment, someone said something very powerful yesterday, that human rights and the international standards are buried under the rubble in this war. And that's where they're buried at the minute. But they will rise again.
It's such a rich and deep discussion. We could go on for hours and hours. I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. So we probably ought to wrap up. Maybe what we'll do is give everyone the floor for a minute or two, and then we can just say a few words to be complete for the day. So why don't we do that? Mirabai, would you facilitate that? Give everyone a moment to say their takeaways and concluding thoughts. Unmute yourself.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. Thank you so much for this really beautiful, powerful conversation. I've learned so much listening to you. Monica, you're amazing. Such a wise, powerful woman. And thank you, all of you, for, standing for peace. This is the most difficult path to choose. And like Monica said, it's like unfinished business and continues on and on and on. So, what I would like to ask from you, what is the one thing that you really want to share with the world right now, the listeners, and what would you like them to know, and how can they also support you or participate in your journey?
All I'm going to say is I'll do whatever you ask me to do. I stand with you every step of the way. That's me finished. And so I'm just, my heart goes out to you. I think about you all the time. You know what people say here? So how much more difficult it must be for you. People say here that they're traumatized simply by watching what's happening, that they cannot sleep at night, that they're crying, that some of them are starting to drink too much alcohol because they cannot bear the pain of watching. So if you're asking us, what can we do? We're thinking of every single thing that we can do to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about the children of the region. This is why I wake up every morning. My children are already relatively grown. They're 24 and 21. They were born to the conflict. I was hoping for them as a young mother that they can enjoy the fruits of the efforts that were before them, before me. But they will also be a generation that will bear on their shoulders the price, the heavy price of living here in this region. My wish, and this is why I get up, what makes me wake up and get up out of bed every morning. My wish is for my future grandchildren to be born to a different future, to not understand why it happened, why it was like that, why it took so long to fix it. This is my wish.
And Gilles,
Yeah.
if I can give you any hope on that, that's exactly how our grandchildren are living now. They ask us,
Thank
what
you.
was it like? Or they said, you know what? You people are, all you can talk about is what happened, but we have a different life. That day, I hope, will come for you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I'm with Dr. Yael, but I'm thinking about myself, how to have good future for me first, and how can I bring hope every day to myself, to my family around, to my even to my friends, and to think how can I stay strong and not give up for all this conflict, all this violence around. Um, and how to make really, as I mentioned, better future for me, for my friends, for all of us. Then I will think about the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm thinking about the opportunities that we have now opening, well, the return of the hostages and the ceasefire, that people can breathe this moment and stop for a second to see that there is like clearing. I'm looking forward to see how things unfold in any path of the way. Me and my colleague, and we're working truly hard to create the change. We don't dream it, we don't vision it. We actually move into practical steps. So I feel within all the hardship, and I think that should push us to be stronger and actually act for change. So thank you. Thank you, Matt, and the team for this great opportunity for Speak Up.
You're very welcome. Well, Dora and Nimad and Yael and Monica, we're so grateful that we've had you with us today. What an amazing discussion. And to our facilitation team of Bill and Mirabai, we're so grateful that you held such a beautiful space today for this conversation. And this is, I think, just the beginning. Of course, it's always the beginning, but maybe it's the middle on some level. But, let's sit down and keep meeting, and I think we can workshop specifically what is the requests of the international community and how could we be organized, and really go out and get the popular support that's necessary to build that critical mass, and have the inspiration of Northern Ireland be fulfilled in Israel, Palestine. So,
Amen. Thank you. Thank you
thank
so
you
much.
again. Please, you can visit our website, Middle East Peace Civic Forum, mebsef.org, and our YouTube channel at Peace Tribe Rising, and see all of these critical conversations. And, we depend on the support of people who are out there in the community to continue doing this work and facilitation. And as everyone can see, there's just a lot of organizing and relationship building and workshopping, and it's not just talking, it's action, but action designed to transform the narrative and transform the popular will for peace and coexistence. And if you look in this room, it's obvious that there's so many decent and good people, and we have to listen to the voice of the women and the people who are saying, stop sending our kids to war and to be traumatized. Let it end with this generation.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.